Oh my goodness, guess who's back? Welcome to Design Details Season 2 here at Music Effect Design. We are so excited to be back. I guess we should introduce ourselves for those who are new here. I'm Jordan Pittner. I'm the Music Effect Design drill designer, I'm a music educator out of Phoenix, Arizona.
I am Tori Angel. I am a teacher and guard educator out of Indianapolis, Indiana.
And I'm Holly Paxton. I am from Phoenix, Arizona, and I teach elementary music and I also teach color guard.
Give him a good hand gesture.
And this is Bella. Sorry, she's wandering around in the back.
Bella the cat.
Yeah.
Bella the cat. I've got my door closed, but Pepper's been in here. You'll see her in other videos, I'm sure, but she likes to perch over there on the couch and just chill out and be a dog and stare out the window and bark and alert us of danger in the form of
Animals are the best.
Top
many
floor of the
apartment
building.
neighbors. Yeah, she gets a good view of the roost from up there. Oh man, I am excited to be back. First off, it has been, when was our last design details video? Like December, early December.
December.
Early December.
Woo. So we took some time off at the end of the season for many reasons, and since this is our first video of the year, I guess we should talk a little bit about what it is we're doing, what we've been doing, and where we go from here. Uh, Anybody want to talk about last year's videos? I can.
So last year we did a series of videos. We started off with the beginning of a design season. So we broke down the steps of what it would look like to start designing a fall marching show, starting with like storyboarding and idea dumping, and then going into some details, design details, how we got the name, about how you would then focus the design from a visual standpoint, from a color guard standpoint, from a music standpoint, and how it all sort of comes together. So that's sort of how we started the videos. We kept going on with just sort of other band related content. We talked a little bit about color guard training, and
We did a lot of interviews as well of just we did a lot of interviews about anything that we thought was relevant at the time. So if it was guard training, guard development, and then like breaking down designs of drum corps and things like that.
I want to talk about what made last year difficult. So last year we had a few different, we're talking right now about basically the two ideas that we had pretty cohesive structures built around. So I think it was Tori, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Tori who had this idea for guard program details videos. And we had this series of guard videos for like 3 or 4 weeks, right, that we put together. And those were kind of a cohesive package. Each episode was related to guard and training your guard in some sort of way, but they all kind of revolved around different topics. The first thing we ever did was actually supposed to just be called design details, and that was the only one. But it's easier to keep swimming down the stream than it is to change course. So we kept the name design details. I feel like it sticks pretty well. All the other videos were kind of a potpourri of craziness. It was kind of a like, am I wrong?
No, whatever we thought was
potpourri
relevant.
of awesomeness.
Yeah, they were good. I feel really proud of the videos.
Craziness.
I feel proud of the videos. The preparation side was
It was
pretty
difficult.
insane. Yeah. So you're like, I heard a band director once talk about like the people in the circus who spin the plates, right? So you like get a plate spinning, and when we were like preparing an idea, like design details or the color guard videos, we're like spinning a plate, right? And then you start to like, okay, well now we've got to go into production, and now we've got to go into recording, and you kind of forget about the plate of preparing the next thing.
Yeah.
And so it became this crazy, like it was like sprinting on a treadmill. Like you're just exercising as hard as you can, but we weren't really getting anywhere sometimes. So I do feel good about the videos. I feel good about the quality of the videos we did last year, but it was the processes behind them that I feel like we really struggled with, and it was kind of crazy to put it all together. So we're going to change things up this year. This year, starting here in April and continuing,
Season 2.
season 2 is the official title or close to it. So So for season 2, we're going to change things up. We're going to do more concentrated videos, sort of like we've done with design details with these color card video recordings. So what you're going to see for the next month is 5 different videos, months, weeks, is 5 different videos, all related to staff development. All right. So we picked staff development for a few reasons. I won't get into those just yet. But what we want to do is just focus on staff development, and then we want to take some time off to prepare our next batch of videos about, roughly a month later. So that's going to be kind of the cycle we're going in. We're going to do videos in this concentrated batch with a bunch of other supplemental content on our website. So if you're watching this on YouTube, also check out our Facebook page that's linked below. But we'll have extra supplemental things. Yeah, I'm like so excited. I want to give things away, but I'm not going to give things away yet.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So keep checking us out here. We'll have a video every Friday for today, and then the next 4 Fridays after this, we'll have videos as well. Tori, I think staff development was your idea, not exactly shocking coming from you. Tell us why pick staff development and why do it right now?
I think there are a lot of reasons why staff development is on my mind all the time. The education side of things really intrigues me, but starting to think of newer educators coming into the scene. I got to work with a few the past few years of just like newer educators who come out of high school and they're just really passionate about whatever they're teaching. And me thinking, are we giving them the right tools to help the students? Are we giving them the right things to develop this program? Like, what are we doing to help them? And this is the perfect time, like April, May, we're like building up our seasons. We're gearing up for hopefully a normal fall season, right? Like we're gearing up, and now's the perfect time to kind of recharge your program. Now's the time for directors and staff members to like rethink how we are approaching our season. Yes, we're focusing on the students. Are we giving them a great design? We're giving them a great whatever, but are we helping the culture of our program? Are we pushing forward our staff to help our students?
Indeed. And like Tori said, the timing is great, right? By now, you're probably planning on a show or a contingency show. Probably got a few things in your mind, but over the next few months, things are going to settle down. Well, eventually, after school's over, things are going to settle down, and it's a great time to think about what skills your staff has and also some skills that maybe they don't have. I think we were talking about this before we started recording today. It's something that gets missed a lot in programs, is further development, not just of the students, but of the staff, right? Why do we think that happens?
Time.
Yeah.
I think that's something that gets pushed to the back burner because you're so focused on developing your show and making sure the parents know what's going on, and you actually have other jobs and things like that as a band director. So I think a lot of the time the time gets crunched, and it's not your number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's also, especially with younger band directors, millennials, even some Gen Xers, like the perception of confrontation, it can be sometimes uncomfortable for a band director to feel confident saying, oh, you're a person I hired. I want you to work on this as somebody who's working with my band. It's sort of uncomfortable, and it's in that, it feels confrontational, and we're going to talk about this soon, about mindset and perception of staff development, but it can sort of be scary to feel confident as a band director telling another person that you see as a professional and maybe even as a peer or older than you. There's some people who hire staff members that are older than them. It might be uncomfortable to start those conversations, which I think is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I will say, thinking about the number of people in our teaching, like color guard or percussion or band in general, a lot of us have performing experience, but we don't necessarily have teaching experience, right? So we
Right.
don't, there's not a ton of us that have education backgrounds, and we just expect, oh, they're really good at spinning. Oh, they're really good at playing and marching. Oh, they march this drum corps. And we're like, hey, they should be really good educators.
Mhm.
That doesn't always equal
Yeah.
good education. So they might be exposed to good education, but they don't understand the steps to make themselves better. So thinking about if we want our programs to develop, I think putting education first is important.
Yeah. I I kind of wonder if it's an ego thing. I think we spend a lot of time uh, thinking specifically about the people who are techs or caption heads or people who aren't the director of bands or somebody actually like employed at the school level as a band or guard or whatever teacher. I think we spend a lot of time as performers, anywhere from 4 to 5 to like 8 years as performers, and then we transition into this other role. And I've heard people talk in the past about how like their staff acted like they knew everything, and so that's kind of the attitude that some people go into their own teaching with, and that can lead to some problems because if you're teaching for the first time, man, you don't have everything figured out. One of my favorite teachers in the world we're going to have on as an interviewee later in the coming weeks talks about all the time how she could do things better and how she would change this and how she would change that. And so, if somebody who is a highly respected educator can continue to approach every single day and focus on the little corrections they can make, then we should be doing that too as young educators. And that's the three of us included. And I think I'm proud to work with these two because they're so process improvement oriented. That's one of my favorite things about both of you.
Right
Um,
back at you.
so let's talk about what development is, because I can already hear some people asking like, well, why am I hiring people if I need to teach them what they're doing? Right? Isn't that
Right.
their job to do? Like, I'm not a guard teacher. I'm not going to hire a guard person so I can train them to be a better guard person. So what's the point in hiring somebody if you're going to have to teach them anyway?
Great question. Let me tell you. um,
Like, pull out the
there
scroll again.
I think the biggest reason to always think development first, like I could have done that better, I could have whatever better, is the student piece of the puzzle. Um, we're not saying that a band director needs to hire a color guard person and say those drop spins could have been better. Like, no, that's not what we're saying. We're more speaking of the one facilitation of
Yeah.
your rehearsals or um, how you're involving the parents, your communication and your rapport with the students. Are you connecting as an ensemble? Do you have the same goals as I do? Things like that to develop, not, hey, that you could have said the do that on count three. We're not talking about the specifics. And I think that's what a lot of people think of when they talk about education. They're thinking about like count one, count two, count three. And that's
Right.
not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about developing as an educator. So communication, facilitating your rehearsals, things like that.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's about providing supports for people with different backgrounds and experiences. Because, I mean, I know a lot of color guard instructors that are also teachers, but there's also an equal amount of people who have never been in a, education classroom. And I know for a fact that all of you band teachers have done that. And when you're the band director, you have experience of classroom management and managing large groups of people. And maybe, especially if you're hiring somebody that's like in their, late teens, early 20s, they might not have all of that stuff. And just being able to observe them and, just like, hey, maybe for next rehearsal, like, let's try this. And it's part of you sharing your knowledge with your staff, which then dissipates into the kids getting better. So staff development is student development.
Hey, Jordan,
Mhm.
a lot of what me and Holly just said kind of sounds like micromanaging. Can you tell us why it's not?
Yeah, absolutely I can. Of course I can. What a novel transition. Um, when I think about, dude, I'm about to take credit for this. We have all talked about this. This is our collaboration. I was about to just take it all and be like me. When we think about um, skill development, which is basically what we're talking about when we talk about staff development, we're saying, hey, we want to develop certain skills that make us more effective teachers. There are like three categories that falls into. Um, so a lot of people sort of like, I think, Tori, you mentioned a lot of people think we're talking about the performance or content knowledge side of things. They're like, and that's what I was kind of referencing earlier when I said, well, if I'm hiring a guard person, I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. Correct, right? You shouldn't be. You are hiring them for their wealth of knowledge about body, about different techniques, right, and the terminology and all those different things. You're trusting them with that information, and you're not going to micromanage that unless you get a big red flag that something is fundamentally incorrect. We're going to miss a lot of nuance in this show. I'm going to be like, well, if, but generally speaking, you're not going to worry about that side of things. The two sides we're talking about are the soft skills and what Tori likes to call the human skills. I think those are the places where we tend to really focus. So it can get really micromanaging if you're watching somebody talk about a drop spin and you're like, well, is that how drop spin is taught? And then you consult somebody and they have like a different approach. And then you come back to this guard person with only one other person's opinion on a drop spin and say, I think you're doing this wrong. That's going to be some serious micromanaging. That's something you're not going to want to do. Yeah. But what you might see is somebody saying, for example, take your hand up, right? So all three of us on the count of three, take your hand and put it up. 1, 2, 3. See how we're all doing different things, right? There's more specific language you can move. Point your fingers to the sky. 1, 2, 3. A little bit closer, right? No, that's okay. That's okay, right? We're doing it a little bit closer. Point all of your fingers to the sky. 1, 2, 3. Oh.
I had my hand in my pocket.
Like, no, get out.
Vicious.
So yeah, performance skills are the thing that we're going to kind of push aside for a lot of this month. There are things you can do to explain those skills better. That's where soft skills and people skills come from. So either one of you, let's talk a little bit about soft skills. What are the soft skills?
Okay.
I was like, I'm just going to smile.
I think soft skills encompass so many things. I think the management is huge. So how are you managing the amount of kids that you have? How are you developing their knowledge? So are you asking them questions? Are you just talking at them for hours? Things like that. How are you taking into account the students? So like maybe you have a whole bunch of like experienced performers. Are you starting them at like, this is a tandu or this is a note? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Are you meeting your students where they are and taking them higher? Or are you like, how are you developing your skills? I think effective questioning is a huge one, like a soft skill that a lot of people don't take into consideration. And that's something that we'll touch on a lot as well. But I think soft skills also include like managing your class. How are you teaching them? How are you assessing them? How are you building rapport with your students? Things like that.
Yeah. And like, things like communication and the ways you're communicating with them. I think one of the biggest soft skills, this sort of comes under the managing umbrella, just like how you're communicating expectations with the kids. That's like a big one that band directors, I think, could do a lot more to help with. Because, do you remember just like 5-10 years ago, it was still like, drop and give me 20 every time you mess something up. And that's very wonderfully starting to be phased out of a good way to motivate,
Right.
students. It's like, you can keep an eye out for stuff like that if you're paying
I
attention.
I think that is a huge reason why I got pushed into this side of education, because I witnessed a lot of the like, you dropped that toss, now run a lap.
Right.
How is that going to educate your students? I'm going to be out of breath and I'm not going to be able to, like, how is that going to help me effectively toss and do it appropriately again?
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of our ideas really match when it comes to like building a culture. And then if your band director is like, I really want us to focus on the education piece, and then one of your staff members has that idea, like that type of culture idea or value,
Mhm.
then it's not going to align, and you need to address that because that's
Yeah.
the clashing type of value.
Have
Right.
you ever been in a band program where the winds, the percussion, and the guard leave the program saying, "Oh, I loved it," or "I hated it," and depending on which part of the program you were in, it changed how they left? It's like, "Oh, at this school, I absolutely hated being in color guard. It was the worst." And it wasn't because the band director, you know, was yelling at the guard, hopefully. It's maybe because their guard instructor's vision of the band experience and the student experience was not lining up with the rest of the program, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think could be kind of cleaned up, and um, that miscommunication could disappear if we as a staff um, look at the future together. So instead of like the band director having a vision and the guard director having a vision, percussion, whatever, if you all work together and have the same type of vision, then
Mhm.
that's going to be less likely to happen because you're always reflecting on, are my actions aligning with this vision? How could I now reach that vision? What can I do to make sure I'm contributing appropriately to that vision? There's so many ways to do that, but I think reflecting on those things and making sure that you have a unified front in that is important. I've been in part of programs that don't have unified visions, and I've also observed them, right? Like we've all been there, and it's just hard. There's always a clash in some direction and you don't feel comfortable like saying anything, and that's just not the type of culture I would want to be a part of.
So that I want to expand on that a little bit more now that you're there, because essentially that's what part two of today is going to be about, right? Is we call it culture. You're calling it vision. You're making me want to watch WandaVision again.
It's good.
But yeah, yeah.
So
So
good.
no kidding. Uh, so much has happened since we left.
You're right.
Anyway, um, so creating a vision, we said that when we're creating a culture, we all came to terms with the idea that we wanted to be a self-development culture or a consistent development culture. Those are some of the terms that we were throwing around when we were talking about culture and vision, and moving forward with a program that emphasizes something like staff development. So I guess my first question for the two of you is how, okay, that's too big a question. What are some of the first steps to creating a culture like that, one that focuses on individual consistent growth and development?
I think honestly, the first thing is to have some legit full staff meetings. Because, like, I mean, I've been part of programs where, like, the design team meets, and it's maybe like just a caption heads meeting to talk about things, but like from a full staff standpoint, building the community across the different parts of the program. Like, I know that I've been part of programs where we didn't ever talk to the percussion instructor or the, brass instructor because, if it wasn't talking during rehearsal, which you probably shouldn't be doing because you're trying to teach, how are you building those connections to then share your vision? So, how can you get everyone together and just get them on the same page as people first?
Mhm.
I think that has a huge piece of like you respect your staff members. You're all treated like you're part of the big picture and not just like you're here. Like it's all of us are in this together. I think that's huge, Holly. I think another big piece is the leadership, like owning up and reflecting as well. So I had the privilege of being taught by my dad for a long time. He was my band director. I was his drum major. It was a nice little setup we had going on. But then the year after I graduated, I got to be his staff member and I got to kind of see a different side of it. I was always there like in my room peeking in on staff meetings whenever I was little, but I actually like got to be a part of them now. And the cool thing about what I liked, like what my dad did was he would always own up for like what he needed to do and what his responsibilities were. And if he needed to grow in something, he would vocalize it. Like he wouldn't hide that he was like, oh, I should have done that better. I made a mistake on that. And that I think helps with the full culture of like, whenever I'm asking you to do something, it's not because I'm blaming you and it's not because I think that you're a terrible person. It's because we all make mistakes and I think we can do better for the kids. And I think that culture goes a long way of taking ownership and that's the leadership is doing that. So let's everybody do that as well.
Let's all pitch into that effort.
Yeah.
That's really what the
Mhm.
core of the next 5 weeks is about, I think. You know, as music teachers, as movement instructors, guard directors, anybody who's on the band staff, basically at a fundamental level, what we're doing is we're asking young people to be vulnerable and to try things that are outside of their comfort zone. And we're asking them to do it at a pretty high level and always asking them to do a little bit more, because we can always do what we're doing. We can always perform just a little bit better. And if that same attitude is not being portrayed from the very top, like with your dad, right? If they're not portraying that, how is that supposed to get down to the staff level and help them improve? And then if the staff isn't doing that, how is that really going to permeate the student level?
Exactly.
Just not going to happen. Not as effectively. I shouldn't say it's not going to happen. I'm sure it could happen, but you're setting yourself up for success by creating a culture where that's your deal. That's your mo.
Absolutely.
And one thing, I don't know, I mean, we probably could have said this at the very, very beginning as well, but when we're talking about staff development, I know that some of you have been part of programs with just gigantic staffs, like, a band director, an assistant director, like 8 people on percussion staff, 10 visual people, like that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's not that big of an exaggeration.
I call it staff army when I see them walking up the bleachers at shows.
Yeah, but this works for giant staffs and it's really important for giant staffs. But you can also do this in like small staff if it's just you and your guard instructor and percussion instructor, or within your thing. If you're the percussion caption head, you can be doing these things to unify your bass drum dude and your pit person and like your snare drum,
Great point.
person, like unifying your subsection of the staff. If you're not in that leadership position of being the lead director, but you are in charge of some other people, you can use this too. This does not just have to be an idea you can only apply if you're a band director.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I was about to say preach it, but then I was going to say the same thing about what Jordan said a little bit ago when he was like, you got to live what you're saying and practice what you preach, right? Like that's exactly right. Like all of these things lead up to your main goal, which is your students. So if you're in charge of a group of people, even if you're like the young person on a middle school guard staff, right? And you're like, hey, what can I do better? Or hey, like you can start these conversations too, not just the director. And if you're a part of a program that doesn't help you grow and you're young and you want to know, then find a place where you can.
Yeah, well said. Well said. before we move on to kind of our last things here, we wanted to give an example of a culture that has been built around this level of self development. Did a little bit of research. We found one that we thought was a perfect fit. Um, I guess, I mean, Tori, you helped me do some of the research. Holly, how familiar are you with Greg Popovich? Don't
I
know the
don't
name.
think I'm familiar at all.
Okay,
Maybe
that's
your
okay.
story will tell me I am, but by name, no.
Well, it's one of those things. You probably either know the person specifically and like, oh yeah, I know who that is, or
Is that a
you
sports
don't know.
person?
It is a sports person.
Ding, ding, ding.
Then definitely not.
A
Okay.
sports person.
Wait, is that the guy with the dinners?
It's the guy who eats dinner. Well done.
Okay. No, you know what I'm saying. The guy who does
Yeah.
the dinners with his people. Is that this
Mhm.
guy?
Yeah.
Hey, I do. Okay,
was
see,
good.
listen to you tell this story. I did not remember the human. Okay.
That's one of my favorite stories. For those of you who don't know, Greg Popovich is the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, NBA, a basketball team, professional basketball team. Greg Popovich has been the coach of the Spurs since 1996. Anybody want to guess how long the next oldest tenured coach is in terms of years when they started?
12 years.
12 years. That's pretty close, I think. So Greg Popovich was hired in 96. Uh, the next coach was with the longest tenure. I can't remember who it is, but they were hired in 2008.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Oh, so 12 years is
he's got 12 extra years on top of them, and also that's like 13 years from right now. So it's pretty close. Yeah. He's been there for a long time. In his time, the team has had incredible success. They've won 5 NBA championships. They have, from what I read, I believe they have a winning record against every single team in the league over that span, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Like they have a winning record against every single team. And Greg Popovich is also the one of the stars, I guess, of one of our favorite books here, The Culture Code, which is where a lot of our conversation today is going to sort of follow, I guess. What Holly was saying about the dinners, the guy with the dinners, is a very famous story of a time where the team basically, if you're a sports person, you'll remember this well. But it was LeBron James' first NBA title. They were really, really close. The Spurs were one shot away from winning the NBA title, but Ray Allen got a shot off, went into overtime. They lost the game and went on to lose the NBA Finals that year in a really close game, really close series. So I don't know. I think there's an expectation when people lose that you do several different things. You could, some people lash out, right? Complain about, in this instance, complain about referees, complain about some other aspect of the other team. They'll complain about something that happened to them. Some of them might even do good things like have a debrief, right? And talk about all the things that went wrong. But Popovich, in that particular instance, decided they were in Miami. He was going to rent out the nicest restaurant downtown. They built like a circle of tables, so the players were on the outside and the coaches sat on the inside of the circle, and they kind of created a barrier of themselves where they just ordered like food and wine all night and just talked and rotated and just had a really good time and didn't really talk about the game. And they just kind of appreciated each other's family and culture, the culture that had been built there. And I think it's such a special story for a lot of different reasons. I think, well, we don't have enough time to talk about all of it, but I just think it's really easy. You know, these two know I'm a what do you call it? A post strategizer. I'm the person who, after something's done, I obsess over what happened, what could have been different, and how I would do it differently next time. But, you know, I just think there's something so special about somebody who would say, like, you know, we did our best. We got right down to the wire. We were one shot away from winning the whole thing, and it didn't go out our way. Let's celebrate. Let's enjoy each other for a while. and I don't know, I just think that culture is really, really special. I'll end this kind of tirade, and we can talk a little bit more openly by saying that a few years ago, 11 of the 30 NBA coaches, head coaches in the NBA, had been under Greg Popovich or part of the San Antonio organization at some point. So he was responsible for 11 different coaches in the 30 coach league.
That's huge. When I found that out, you told me that. I didn't just know that, I'm not an NBA person. uh, but when you told me
The
that,
texts.
that's
Yes.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Thinking that the NBA, all the coaches in the NBA, um, a third of them, right? Math,
Yeah.
a third of them had worked under this man, and that is the culture that he set. And that's most likely the culture that is now implanted in these other programs. So that's powerful. That's hopefully encouraging to know that it's more of like a, I don't want to say education based, but education, family oriented, like supportive network.
Mhm.
I mean, if you think about how this plays out in the band world, you see the people that leave programs that just made them feel so good and happy and enjoy what they're doing. Those are the ones that go on to continue performing in college, or continue on and teach. Those
Mhm.
people that were happy with what their experience was like. I've met people who were like, man, my band director was so mean to us. I hate band. And then they just go on hating band. There's nobody from that school that's still teaching, still
Right.
performing. None of them went to college to do band, just did their other things. But the
Mhm.
ones who were happy usually followed through.
It just is that cycle of, if you have a positive relationship with your students, you're making the students latch on to this idea of what a great performing network we have, and then they'll go on and do the same thing to other students, and they'll go on and do the same thing to other students. So it's our, whatever we're doing in educating the students, that's going to influence the future of the performing arts. It just is. So being able to say that you're doing that in a positive direction, that's huge.
I heard someone recently say that, all the things that happen in life are just cycles. And it was used in a really, yeah, I know it's going to get deep now. Well, it was in a really dark context. It was about abuse, and it was saying people who are abused tend to abuse. And so
Yeah.
the cycle continues. And so the person's philosophy was, if we continue to perpetuate the cycles we want, and then we say the cycle ends with me on the things that we don't want, um, that creates a better world for everybody. I was abused, but that cycle stops with me. I was, you made me think of it, Holly, when you were saying, people perpetuate this like great warm feeling of being proud of being in a program. And we're talking about the like family aspect of like the Greg Popovich story, but don't forget, like, also 5 NBA titles. Like, it's not just feel good. There are high expectations. There is an
Yes.
intense, like, he's notoriously known for getting the most out of these players that are pretty good. He, it has a reputation for elevating them to a really great place. So perpetuate the cycles you believe in, and end the cycles that you know you don't. All right. So if you're watching this, um, and if you're watching this far, my guess is that you are really eager in going the extra mile and learning a little bit more for your program. And you are not alone. We are with you. So we don't want this to just be things that you think about and consider and then kind of move on. We're hoping that you can actually do something actionable because of this. So we're going to do this here on stream for about 1 minute. If you'd like to, you can do it with us. Grab a pen and paper, or get out your phone and type somewhere in a note section. But we've got a few questions for you. We'd like for you to answer for yourself, and they'll help kind of direct you, hopefully, forward as we go through these next few weeks. So if the two of you are ready, we're going to do these as well. We'll spend about 1 minute on each of these. It doesn't have to be too deep, and it doesn't have to be for anybody watching either. I have 3 questions for you. Who would you want to work for? Right? Not necessarily just a person, but what type of qualities would a person have? Who is the type of person you would like to work for? Let's do these one at a time. Otherwise, I'm going to overload people. So let's do 20 seconds, everybody. Who would you want to work for? Then we'll do a round robin share. When I teach classes, I'll say something like, when you're done, balance your pen on your nose.
Mm-hmm. Mine's always the mustache.
Yeah, right.
I use my computer
I
to
got-
write, so I'm gonna leave that on the table.
Like wobbling in the air. We can see like the cone of clean. You know what I'm talking about. Round robin. I said I want to work for someone who's passionate, who has high expectations, and connects with me beyond my work. Holly, what'd you put?
I wrote someone who's kind, willing to listen, and is trusting.
Tori?
And I said connected, value driven, and motivated.
Great. Question 2. How would you want others that you lead to see you? How would you want others that you lead to see or perceive you?
My answers are the same.
Me too.
I was gonna add high expectations.
Okay.
Plus
great.
the other words.
Okay. So we want the person we work for to be the same as how other people see us. Okay. Last question. I know all of us are in kind of different scenarios here. But what do you do to develop your staff currently? This could be this one's
Can
mainly
it be
targeted.
semi recently?
Yeah, right.
For a
The
more
last-
relevant.
The last place you developed staff or was responsible in a role like that. Were responsible in a role like that. We'll do 20 seconds on this one. I jotted down create scenarios. We can talk about that a little bit more later. Also use recordings. Tori?
I love use recordings. That's fire. I didn't think about that one. My biggest one is text strands. So like we text about what could have been better, what we're going to do next time, making plans for the future, things like that.
Cool.
I wrote pay attention to sort of what's happening at rehearsals and look to what you want to optimize. Like, okay, we should do this better. Then have a conversation with that person about what's the best way to try something new. What can we do next time?
Yeah, all great stuff. So for anybody who's filling this out on your own, I want you to think about what you do to develop your staff currently. Maybe the answer is you don't really do that. You don't pay attention to that right now. And that's totally fine. We're not making a value judgment on your quality as an educator. I know tons of good educators who have not done this. But like I said earlier, I think if you're watching this, if you're committed to continuing to better yourself, that creates that teaching kind of top down value system that helps ensure your students that you're in the same boat as them. So take a look at what you're saying for you, like what you do to develop your staff currently, and jot down some notes. Jot down what you think you could do to take your next steps. Right? It's not transform my teaching, but just what's one small thing you can do to make it better. In part two, we're going to talk about things that are a little bit more technical. We're very like high level and philosophical today. In part two, we're going to talk about how we take these cultures, value, beliefs, and translate that to finding the right people and setting the right expectations for those people. So that'll be next Friday, same time, same place, right here on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're at. We'll be back then. Any final thoughts from you, Tori or Holly?
I think the biggest thing for me is collaborating or finding out what other of your colleagues, other programs around you, or even different states are doing. So finding out that there are other ways to do maybe the same thing you're doing, just like in a different way to connect with a different variety of people. So I would say, maybe find out what your friends are doing, find out what your colleagues are doing to do staff development and see if you can start implementing those different things as well.
I'm just going to ditto that. That was better than anything I could have said right now. Yes.
Ditto. Dittos are good.
Dittos are
Wherever
good.
she's at.
Dittos are always good. Great. If you've been here this whole time, thank you for joining us. We really have a belief that we can continue to do things better, and we want to be invested in people who feel that same way. So thanks for watching. If you've got questions, you can send them to us at info@musiceffectdesign.com. That's kind of our catch-all email address, and we do our best to get back to everybody who reaches out to us. So reach out to us there. Let us know what questions you have and what we can address as we continue to move forward in this month. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week.